Yo, what is up guys, YCS here, bringing you guys a video about what is the best decks for June of 2018. With the addition of Brandish Maidens, or now known as Sky Strikers, is definitely going to shake up the format, and we're definitely going to see this deck in Nationals and the upcoming YCS, which is YCS New Jersey. The biggest question of this format is, what is the best deck and what is the most consistent deck to bring to these events? And I'm going to explain that in this video, so let's get started. The first deck I want to talk about in this video is Sky Strikers, one of the most anticipated decks of this format. It is so consistent and can grind out your opponent. It's just a very strong deck to play in this current meta. Not to mention, this deck is so splashable because Sky Striker Mobilize Engage is such a strong card in today's format, and having 3 spell in the graveyard just to get a +1 off of the draw is just a very good card. Now, to say which variant is going to be the strongest going up into this format is up for the players to decide and to figure out, but we know this deck is going to be seen in the format in all decks like Goki's, Trickstars. Just even by itself, it's very good in general. Overall, this deck has all the tools it needs to be a meta deck, and the only real issue with this deck is that it has a slow start. Not really a very strong one, but a very consistent one, which is why this deck is very powerful. The next deck I want to talk about in this video is Nightmare decks, specifically Spiral and Goki Nightmares. These cards are not only so splashable in a lot of decks, but they are capable of making extra link combos with Gokis and Spirals, which are very devastating if they are able to make that extra link. The deck can struggle with disruption like hand traps and infinite impermanence, but depending on their hand, they can pretty much play around either 1 or 2 hand traps if they do open a very good hand. This deck only has really one strategy in the deck, and that is to extra link. But if you're not up for that type of strategy, you definitely should not touch this deck, but you should definitely be prepared for this matchup. The next deck I want to talk about in this video is Trickstars. Now, Trickstars have been in the format for a very long time now. It's almost been about a year, and this deck is still very consistent and has so many power plays despite it being such a weak deck in terms of attack. With the addition of the Nightmare cards and the Sky Striker archetype, this deck can definitely be a very hard matchup to deal with, and we still have the Reincarnation Droll combo, which can be very devastating and can honestly win you a match or 2. There's not much else new to say about this deck because it is so successful since its release, and it's just a very strong deck in general. The next deck I want to talk about in this video is Altergeist, one of the most strongest stun decks in the current meta, and I think it's honestly one of the top decks in the game. This deck can seem like an auto win going first against certain matchups because trap cards are just too much for them to handle, and they can't really get off their combos like Gokis and Spirals. Not only that, but they have the interaction of infinite impermanence and then resolving multi-faker, summoning out your Sequidius or your Miluseek so you can get out your combos next turn, going into Hexia, adding a card from deck to hand like multi-faker or Marionetter, and then just automatically blowing your opponent out. Since the deck doesn't have that many monsters, or they run little to no spell cards in their deck, they can play cards like Ash Blossom and Joy Spring, Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, Cherries, etc. These cards are very good in today's format. I would say the biggest downside about this deck is either your opponent opening up with Evenly Matched or Red Reboot, or you just can't get your combo started with Multi-Faker and Sequidius. Now the next deck I want to talk about in this video is Mekk-Knight Invoke. Now this is a very rogue choice for this type of meta because it's not the combo based decks like Spirals and Gokis where you extra link your opponent, and it's not like Sky Strikers or Altergeist where you're kind of grinding out your opponent. The strength of playing this type of deck is that you can go second and you can break your opponent's board or stop them from doing any plays going second, and it's really strong for that, but it's not really strong going first and setting up a board. I feel if this deck can find a way for it to go first and kind of stop their opponent from doing anything when going first, I feel like the deck can definitely excel and win in certain matchups. The last and final deck I want to talk about in this video is True Dracos. Now True Dracos is a very crippled deck by the new ban list, but it is still strong because of the floodgates that are strong in this format, like Imperial Order, Imperial Iron Wall, etc. These cards are just so strong against certain matchups, it can just be devastating. Since the deck is very consistent, and with the addition of Dynamite to 1 and Ignis to 3, this deck can still be a very tough matchup for a lot of decks because of how powerful breaking boards is with this deck right now. Before I finish talking about this deck, I want to mention Waking the Dragons because it's a very strong card against this matchup, and resolving this card is just very devastating because Ultimate Falcon is just an auto win against this match because they have little to no outs in the deck. I highly recommend running Kaijus in the side deck when playing this deck for when the situation occurs. So that is it guys, let me know what you guys think about this video and what should I do to actually improve my content. I also do want to give an honorable mention to Pendulum Magicians or Pendulums in general because the deck is still very good, but a lot of people are just not talking about it in today's format. So let me know what you guys think, and I'm out.